Hi, everyone. Welcome to Wine.com Experiences. I'm Gwendolyn Osborne. So glad you can join us for this evening. Today, we're speaking to members of one of the most iconic and innovative winemaking families of Italy, the Gaias. The Gaia family is operating now under the fourth and fifth generation. They're renowned for their work in Piedmonte and actually more recently in Tuscany and Sicily. So we are tasting three Gaia wines tonight. And in order, and please forgive my Italian, but in order, we'll be tasting the Ca Marcanda Magari, which is from Bolgheri in Tuscany, the Pieve Santa Restituta Brunello di Montalcino, also from Tuscany, and the finishing wine will be the Dagromis Barolo from Piemonte. So if you purchase these wines ahead of time, you'll see where we are here on the map, the Piemonte, the Bolgheri, Montalcino. If you purchase the wines ahead of time from Wine.com to taste along, great. I encourage you to get them open, definitely pour them into some glassware. I realize there are three wines, three very good wines, three very big wines. But if you can, I encourage you to open them all because these are the kind of style of wines that will last for a few days that you can enjoy over the next few days, several days, and they'll probably evolve in the bottle a little bit so you don't have to finish them all tonight. And it'll be nice to kind of taste them all side by side. That said, I get it if you don't want to open all three tonight. This video does live on our Wine.com YouTube channel, so you can always revisit it and taste along whatever you don't get to this evening. So let us bring in our guests who will be joining us. So please help me welcome Gaia and Giovanni Gaja.
Hi.
Welcome. Hi, Gaia. So good to see you. And Giovanni, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for staying up pretty late in Italy to join us and taste some wines and talk about your family history and your story. I think to start off, I want to showcase the passion behind your family, this wine. And I don't think there's a better way to do that than a message from your father, Angelo Gaja. So let's let him tell us about the land and the wine in his own words.
Bees, butterflies. Is a music. Life. Welcome to everybody. This is Angelo Gaja, 81 years old, the father, and I am in a Nebbiolo vineyard here in Barbaresco. Nebbiolo is the grape variety producing Barbaresco wine. And we are in a vineyard full of flowers. And like all our vineyards during this month of April and May are full of flowers. This is mustard that we seed last November, and then now is flowering, and the flower will last for almost 1 month, attracting bees, butterflies, and the birds, life, making the vineyard full of life. And the vines, I suppose, but I'm sure, not only suppose, that are smiling to this all flowers and insects and the life that is in the vineyards. I am an artisan. What does it mean to be an artisan? It means to have my own project that I like to do in my own way. The project starts in vineyards, that is the most important for us, through the cellar until arriving in the market. My work is to be able to give inspiration to my collaborators. I have 3 children that are working with me in the winery. You will have the chance this evening to share time with them, and they will be proposing wines that you will have a beautiful evening. I try to teach them to be able to think different, to cultivate doubts and having a passion. What is important in our field is to have a passion in what we do. Passion is like the windscreen wiper. It doesn't stop the rain to fall, but it helps to go on and on. The privilege of being a wine producer is that we have the chance of keeping a foot in nature, in the land, and the other in the world, with you. Bye to everybody. Have a beautiful evening.
Oh, so I love this video. I think it just shows that your father's passion and his just connection to the land and the wine that you make. And it's a little bit late for Angelo to be out. So I'm so glad you're here to kind of share the story of what you're doing. And you know, Gaia and Giovanni, you are, you know, the fifth generation of Gaia. You grew up part of this winery, this family. I was hoping maybe you'd tell us a little bit about growing up in Barbaresco, and maybe some memories about growing up in the vineyard with your father and his vision and his passion. And Gaia, I'm gonna start with you on that one.
Well, growing up in Barbaresco, my childhood was very simple and quite protected, because Barbaresco is a small village of 600 people, and my father, my mother, both my grandparents live in Barbaresco, and it's a simple countryside village. And we grow up with the father always with strong passion, as you said, and big commitment at the same time. So a big example, not only him. We don't talk much about my mom, our mother, but she's also very, very important. You know, in the past, we were used to say that behind a great man, there is a great woman. Uh-huh. But my mother is very important. She's beside my father, sometimes also in front of my father.
Giovanni, what about you? What are some of the things that kind of stick out from growing up with your father's passion in the vineyard, growing up there?
So I think both me, Gaia, and Rossana, we've grown surrounded by wine, with our dad that always kind of involved us in everything that he did. And so I think he was, as I said in the video, he was the one that was instilling passion in us by always involving us in everything that he did, inviting us and making us feel included in everything that he did. And I think that this helped, because today all the family works into the winery with 5 people. We meet, we work on a daily basis into the winery, and we have no other choice than going along together, because we were there all day. When we're done working and we walk home, which our home are all 100 meters across from each other, we even have the risk of bumping into each other in the main and only road of Barbaresco.
Oh, but I love that. I love that. That love of vineyard, love of family, it kind of comes together. And Giovanni, we're tasting 3 wines from Gaia tonight, but we're not tasting a Barbaresco. But Gaia is so intertwined with the region. It was such a huge influence on bringing this region to so many people around the world. So can you just maybe talk a little bit about, even though we're not tasting one, a little bit about the hallmarks of a great Barbaresco, especially in the Gaia vision?
Yeah, so the Barbaresco for us is really the flagship wine of the winery. It's the wine that truly represents our personality, our history, it's really our identity, because it's the only wine that has always been produced for more than 160 years and by every single generation. When I think of the Barbaresco, I think one of the best ways to define the Barbaresco is to use the word less is more, because Barbaresco is less tannic, is less powerful, is less, but makes it great. Because when you think of the Barbaresco, you think it's very elegant, it's very delicate, it's very floral, it's very ethereal. So it's a very delicate and, if you want, feminine wine.
I love that. Sometimes sometimes when those kinds of wines come about, you could almost say it's like a Barolo on its like standing on its tippy toes. You know, it just kind of lightens up a little bit. But yes, I Barbaresco. However, as much as your family has certainly done so much for this region and made such a mark in Barbaresco, it's also taken its passion elsewhere. So Gaia, maybe we can talk a little bit about the first wine we're tasting, which is the Kamakanda Magari. Am I saying that right?
Yep. So tonight, thanks to wine, we will taste truly 3 different areas of Italy. It's not easy to define what wine is, because wine is not just a drink, it's not just a beverage. So to take it high, I say that wine is a testament of humanity. And I say this because when you taste the wine, you really taste the history of a region. You actually truly taste the geography. And wine, inside you can discover different philosophies. The personality of the producer is the result of scientific research, cultural richness. So there are really a lot of factors that makes wine really interesting. So we started by discovering the first region, which is Bolgheri. So Bolgheri is in the north part of Maremma. So you know, sea is seaside, sea in Italian is mare. So Maremma is the region of Toscana that touch the sea, the mare, the coast of Toscana. And Bolgheri is on the top part of Maremma. Is taking the name from the village Bolgheri. And the village Bolgheri is surrounded by the wine region Bolgheri, that is quite small, are 3,200 acres, where you can make Bolgheri DOC wines. And the area is very particular. It represents an exception respect to the rest of Tuscany, because in Tuscany, Sangiovese is the king variety. The exception is Bolgheri, that is the region where producers focus on Bordelaise international varieties. Right. And this has to do with the history of Bolgheri and the geography at the same time, because Bolgheri is not a very historic wine region. Actually, is a region that, because it was so close to the sea, for a long time was covered by water, was a marshland. So there is not really, there are not a local variety and a long history in making wine. There are few dates that are important for the Bolgheri area. 1944, that is the first year that was planted the vineyard of Cabernet Sauvignon, that then became the first and most important wine called Sassicaia. 1968 was the release date of Sassicaia. And then 1994, so a little bit more than 25 years ago, that's the date when for the first time was created the DOC for red wines. So before 94, the wines made in Bolgheri were table wines. From 94, they became Bolgheri DOC. And my father arrived in Bolgheri in 1996. So this year is the 25th year that we are in Bolgheri. I think that the motivation was driven by a big desire that he had of creating something on his own from zero. In Italy, 99% of wineries are wineries that you heritate from the previous generation, or are wineries that you buy from a previous owner. So it means that there is already a structure and there is a past that you have to melt into it. But Bolgheri represented the opportunity of making something completely new, a new denomination that had just started. There was a piece of land, a virgin piece of land, not planted with vineyard, right in the center of the Bolgheri denomination that my father found, and that he was very interested in. It was not an easy negotiation to buy the land.
Yeah, so I want you to tell us about the name too, because he, well, first, I love that this ties into when you said, when your father said in his video, I've always challenged him to think different. So that's obviously thinking different, is saying, oh, here's land that nobody's had. It's something new. I'm coming here. But tell us about Kamakanda and what that means and how that
it's a nickname that was a nickname given in the family. It was given actually by my mother. She's the one that started to call the project the Kamarkanda. And Ka is a short for casa, which in Italian means home, so property. And Marcanda, in our Piemontese dialect, it means negotiating. No, to market we say marcandare. So camarcanda together means it's a property of a hopeless negotiation. Because my father really had to insist and have 18 appointments before he could finally achieve his goal and buy the land. But there is also another reason why I think my father moved and decided to challenge himself into this new project, and is the beauty of Bolgheri, a beauty that he discovered when he started to travel weekly to Toscana, because in 1994 he bought Pieve Santa Restituta in Montalcino, and so to go to Montalcino he was always crossing Bolgheri, and at the end he was defeated by the beauty of the area, which is an effortless beauty. There are simple things like the brightness of the light, the fact that you look at the sea, the perfume of the air that is infused by the woods, the Mediterranean woods. Everything seems to be harmless, but in reality has a very strong power, comes in. When you are in Bolgheri, you are pervaded by the beauty, the simple beauty of the area, and comes naturally a sense of optimism and happiness. So I think this played an important part as well. And these are characteristics that are influencing the wines as well. So there are a few characteristics in the microclimate that are important to define the wines. There is the area is very influenced by the sea and the mountain. It's like a stripe of land between mountain and sea. The mountains are parallel to the coast. So there is a brightness due to the proximity to the sea, a brightness and the warmth that give to wine always a full ripeness. Often there is an opulence in the wines, a rich fruit expression, tannins that are many, but they are ripe.
Yeah. I just want to let everybody at home start tasting the wine while you're talking about it, because you're talking about these wonderful things coming out of the wine. So I want everybody to be able to kind of taste them and enjoy them. So yeah, just keep going, just talking a little bit about that classic Bolgheri style, and especially with the grapes that you're blending in, because it's Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, Petit Verdot, yeah?
The hardcore is Cabernet Franc.
Okay.
And is 60%, even though that slightly change every time. But what is important is the Cabernet Franc expression. And then we play around the Cabernet Franc with a little bit more or less of Cabernet Sauvignon, Petit Verdot, Cabernet Sauvignon to give sometimes more structure, Petit Verdot to give more suppleness and fruit expression. But there is another characteristic of Bolgheri that is important, that you have constantly an exchange of winds. So there are cool winds coming from the sea going to the mountains. And so during the night, this air cooled on the mountains flows back. So warm days, bright, and then also cold nights. And this is also giving nice acidity to the wines, freshness, which we like a lot. So they tend to be wines more approachable because of their richness, but at the same time, they also have longevity. And it's an area that proved already in a very short time, in 25 years, basically proved what a great potential it has. There is another uniqueness of Bolgheri. There is no other region of Italy that comes to my mind that attracted in such a short time so many important names. From important foreign consultants, from Chelichef, that was from California, that came and made wine in Bolgheri, as well as Tibor Gal from Hungary and Michel Roland. And then there are producers from Italy that bought land and started wineries in Bolgheri, from Allegrini from Veneto, Feudi di San Gregorio from Campania. There are Argentinian, Australian, Austrian, Russian investors. So it's a melting pot of contributions and culture, which is very important. We arrived in 96, and at the time I remember there were about 10 wineries making wine. Today there are 56 wineries, so also very dynamic region. We make 3 wines. Promise is the synthesis of the winery in the most joyful and fruitier way. Then we have Camarcanda that is focusing on Cabernet Sauvignon, probably the most noble variety that we work with, and Magari. And with Magari, we decided to focus on Cabernet Franc, which is a variety that marries very well with Bolgheri. Ripes well. I like the fruit because it's never too black. So there is black fruit and there is red fruit. It has a nice freshness. It's a variety that ripes well, so there is never greenness, stemminess, but actually it's even enhancing the Mediterranean perfume of the woods in Bolgheri. So all things that we appreciate very much. And the style that we try to achieve is to represent all these characteristics of Bolgheri. For me, it's not important if the varieties are international. It doesn't mean that international variety makes international wine. International wines are wines that are made by a producer that is making an international style. But even with the most local variety, the authenticity comes when you cultivate well the vineyard. And only like that you are able to really express the site. So this is the goal.
And well, I get some dark chocolate here, which I think might be my favorite thing coming out. But also, it's a very unique place.
Yeah, there is also saltiness that when I find in the wines of Bolgheri, I find very, very important because that's from the sea.
Yeah, it's a beautiful wine. I've had the Promise many times, but this is my first time with the Magri, so I'm very excited. So thank you so much. Beautiful wine. What is the aging potential for this wine? Because I think a lot of people want to know for these three wines, because it's delicious now, but should you want to put it down?
But our wines, the wines from our vineyard, they tend also to keep they have a little bit of a severity and austerity. So there is approachability in the wines of Bolgheri, but our wines anyway, they always need a little bit of time to fully express themselves. The first vintage made of Magari was 2000. So far we have 20 years of experience. They keep up very well, and they always keep. I think that when they age, they always keep freshness and botanical Mediterranean perfume that they go for a long time. So far 20 years, I can say.
20 years is working. Okay, good. We'll do that. Thank you so much. So our next wine that we're going to, also from Tuscany, we're going to Brunello di Montalcino, and a magical place in Tuscany. Giovanni, what drew your family to this region? Because I believe it became before Bolgheri, but yes.
Yeah. I think I had a lot to do with that. Part of the merit is mine, because I was born in 1993, and my father, after having 2 girls, finally was confident that he had a boy. So the family started to enlarge, and he also felt confident with the 3 children to also start a new project and a new adventure in Montalcino. Also, in the 1990s, and at the beginning of the 1990s, in Piedmont, we had a series of unlucky vintages. In 1991, we didn't produce any of our single vineyards in Barbaresco. In 1992, we produced only the whites and only 1 red wine that was Sito Moresco. 1993, we had to cut off 50% the production. 1994, we didn't produce the single vineyards again. So there was an interest to get involved and to challenge ourselves with a new area and a new wine region. Brunello di Montalcino, similarly to the Barbaresco, is among the most prestigious wines in Italy. And also Brunello di Montalcino, always similarly to Barbaresco, is a wine region that focuses on 1 single variety, Sangiovese, which is an indigenous variety, is a variety that it's difficult to tame, it's difficult to cultivate, it takes a lot of knowledge, and so for this reason it was also charming and at the same time challenging. So our approach and our reasoning was we have 160 years of experience with Nebbiolo. Let's try and apply it to Sangiovese, because Brunello and Barbaresco are very different wine in very different regions, but they have some similarities. One of the main differences that I noticed about between Montalcino and Barbaresco is that whereas in Barbaresco the soil composition is mainly limestone and clay, Montalcino instead has different soils, and soils can really vary a lot. They can move from sandy soils to limestone to clay to marine origin soils. There are a lot of soils where actually by walking around you can find a lot of fossils which still of a marine origin. And when you walk into the soils of Montalcino, you can actually already visibly see this difference, but you feel it even more with Sangiovese, because when you plant Sangiovese in such different soils, it expresses so differently that it almost feels like a completely different variety.
Yeah.
Pieve Santa Restituta was a winery that was already existing. It was
but it was a chapel beforehand, yes?
Yes, so it was already existing. It was a friend of a Swiss friend of ours that suggested also this place, because he was a true connoisseur of the Montalcino area. He was really knowledgeable about the potential of this area. So he suggested us, we may, after a period of research and study, we purchased it in 1994. The name Pieve Santa Restituta in Italian, Pieve means church, and Santa Restituta was a name of the saint to which the church was devoted to. Because in the center, in the middle of the property, there is a church that dates back to the 400s.
Yeah, so go ahead, sorry. We're just going to put the photo up because we have a photo of the church.
It dates back to the 462, because the property has been owned by the clergy for 14 centuries, and the clergy was already making wines before we purchased in 1994. So it's a magical place, like you said about Montalcino, but it's also a place where you can feel the history and the great past of Montalcino. The wine that you're tasting tonight, the Brunello, is the introductory wine to the Pieve Santa Restituta lineup. It's the Brunello
label.
is produced. Yeah, I have it.
It's beautiful label. Yes, you have one too.
Pieve
Santa Restituta.
It's very long and difficult to pronounce, I know.
I took French. This is difficult. Pieve Santa Restituta. Yes, yeah.
So the Brunello comes from grapes located in 2 areas of Montalcino. One is called Tavernelle and is located in the southwest part of the Montalcino denomination. Tavernelle is an area that is very well located in the Montalcino, because it's protected from the Monte Amiata, from the colder winds coming from the Apennine mountains that runs in the central part of Italy. At the same time, it's located at 350 meters of altitude, and it enjoys some of the nocturnal breezes that comes from the sea, and this really helps during summer to cool down the temperatures. The elevation is also very important, because it protects this area from autumn and spring frost. To the point that in 26 years that we are in Montalcino, we never had a problem with frost in Tavernelle, because it's very well protected. The soils in Tavernelle are complex soils, very compact. Usually Brunello coming from Tavernelle is more austere, more elegant, and more structured. Then the Brunello is completed with a 9-hectare property. It is located in an area that is called the Torrenieri, which is located instead on the opposite side of where Tavernelle is located. Now we move into the northeastern part of Montalcino. Torrenieri is an area that is facing more towards the inland of Tuscany. It doesn't enjoy the same protection of Tavernelle, and in fact this is an area that is more difficult to manage because it's more exposed to winds, it's more exposed to frost. 2 weeks ago, unfortunately, we were hit by frost in the area. We need to wait another 10 days to assess the damages, and hopefully, finger crossed, it's not going to be bad, but we'll see. The characteristic of Torrenieri is that is an area that during summer it's warmer. So the soils plays a crucial role because soils are very rich in clay, and clay becomes like, it turns into a sponge. When it rains, it absorbs all the water, it stores and creates a reserve, and then it gives it back when the vines need it. So from Torrenieri, usually Brunello from Torrenieri, you get more fruity expression, you get more opulence, but at the same time also more it's more immediate. So in the Brunello you have two expressions of two different areas, different soils combined. You get the elegance and the austerity from Tavernelle, and the forwardness and the fruitiness from the Torrenieri area instead.
So tell me, so I'm tasting this wine. It's very different from the Bolgheri. We're still in Tuscany, but we're in these two very different places. Obviously, one, we're using these international grapes, these kind of bigger, bolder wines. This is definitely Sangiovese. What do you love about this? Like, how does this speak to you? I mean, what are you getting from here that just says, this is Sangiovese, this is Brunello di Montalcino?
What I like about Sangiovese is that it's a very moody variety. As I said earlier, it's different to cultivate, it's different to predict, so it always keeps you very entertained.
Oh, so okay, that's like my teenage daughter. Got it. Okay, yeah. Just kidding. Okay, continue on. Sorry.
So, what I like about the Brunello, and I think especially our Brunello, is that it's flexible because you have immediacy, and because when you put your when you smell it, it's there. It's very expressive. It's very it's almost explosive. But at the same time, and also as Gaia said, there is also austerity behind. So it's a wine that you can start to approach when it's young, but it also will have a good cellaring in the future.
And how long would you, so for longevity, for this wine, how will it evolve? What will happen in the next 5, 10, 15 years? What would you recommend? What will happen?
That's a good question.
Because you have a future. I mean, you have a crystal ball. Just tell me what's happening. But what should someone expect if they wanted to put this down for a few years?
I think similar to Magari can go another. I think for sure 15 or 20 years it will definitely last.
Yeah,
especially 2016 because it's an excellent vintage, very very balanced. There is, when I taste Brunello often, or our Brunello often, I find a perfume that reminds me rocks, in a humid rocks. Basically, they remind me, when you go down the stairs of the winery, and the winery is all made in rocks, so there are some parts where the walls are more humid, and comes out a perfume from the rocks, wet, that I can find here. And then I also find always a sort of balsamic note. It's a different like in Magari, I have Mediterranean woods. Here I have other perfume of woods. it's more balsamic, reminds me more leaves with some sap, and then the fruit, it's like a very ripe cherry, wild cherry.
Yeah, it's quite beautiful. Yeah, and they're very different, but they both have this wonderful aroma, and like you said, the cherry comes through so much on the Brunello di Montalcino, and that kind of, and I love that your description of the stone. I think that's perfect.
You find it, right?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so our third wine, we're coming back to Piemonte with Dagromis. Am I saying it right? Dagromis?
Yes.
Barolo.
Yeah.
All right. So Gaia, describing Barolo, if someone wants to kind of understand Barolo, because, and maybe this wine in particular, because there's some sub-regions of Barolo that really make an impact on the wine. So Dagromis, it comes from, which sub-regions does Dagromis come from?
Sure. It comes from two municipalities, the village of La Morra and the village of Serralunga. There are some villages where entirely all the municipality is inside the Barolo denomination. Barolo village, Castiglion-Falletto, Monforte, Serralunga, La Morra. They are all really in the heart of Barolo. And then there are some other villages where only some sides of the municipality, some slopes are part of the denomination, like Verduno, Grinzane, and few others. So our vineyards, because all the wines that we are tasting today are coming from vineyards that we cultivate and that we own. So the vineyards that we use for Dagromis are several. Few are in La Morra and few are in Serralunga. In general, we say that the soils in La Morra are Tortoniani. Tortoniano is the geologic era. Are soils that they tend to be, they are soils that they have more presence of compact sand, while Serralunga is Helveziano. Geologically are soils that are much more compact soils, and so generally a more compact soil like the soil that you find in Serralunga gives you more compact wines, more tight, more close, they need more time to open up. And the Nebbiolo that grows in La Morra from a relatively lighter soil tends to be more open, a little bit more gentle. But in reality, it's not that simple because it plays the morphology, the shapes of the hills in Piemonte are very dramatic. So you have to mix together the soil type, more compact or less compact, the exposure, because here we talk about south, west, east exposure. And then
we call it aspect. Sometimes
you call how?
Aspect, like the aspect.
Aspects. Okay, yeah, I heard that.
But yes, exposure actually makes sense.
Yeah. And then there is the altitude that plays another important part. And then how close or far you may be from rivers, that they influence also the humidity. Nebbiolo loves humidity. Nebbiolo likes humidity coming, the area is very humid. Even in the summer, the sky is never clearly blue like in Bolgheri. Here, there is always an humidity that comes because we are walking on heavy clay soils. So soils that are full of humidity. And then differently from Bolgheri, you don't have a open space where winds can blow. There are hills surrounding every space. So the air is blocked and the humidity stays there and creates fog. Dagromis comes from mainly two vineyards. One vineyard is in La Morra and is the vineyard of Cerecchio. It's a very important and historic cru. We have 9.5 hectares in Cerecchio. from 4 hectares, we make a single vineyard, which is called the Contesa. From the rest, 5 hectares and a half, we use the grapes for the blend of the Agromis. We also have another single vineyard that is in Serralunga, is called Spers. And so some of the grapes are coming also from the vineyard of Spers, but most of the grapes for the Agromis, they come from nearby vineyards. So in La Morra we have Cerecchio. Then you have to add one little vineyard in, it's called Silio, which has east exposure. So the wines there, they tend to be a little bit less fruit forward, more floral, more fresh. Then there is another vineyard in La Morra, which is called the Serra dei Turchi, that has a soil that is very sandy, so doesn't give you very compact Nebbiolo, but very elegant, very supple. And also Serra dei Turchi is southeast exposure. So it means that it gets the sun in the morning and then much less during the afternoon. And so it's a more gentle sun. The grapes, they ripe in a different way, less from the direct sun. And then when you are in Serralunga, we have a vineyard that is completely devoted to the Agromis. It's called Margheria, west facing, rich soil, gives you more fruit forward, supple Nebbiolo. Then there is Marenca, Rivette, which give more power, more austerity of tannins. And then there is another vineyard that is called Colombaio, and a last vineyard called Broglio. I think I have a map of that. So are all different vineyards that are blended together. And this is something important because often Piemonte is compared with Burgundy. There are a lot of similarities in the culture, in the philosophy of the making of the wines. But in reality, historically, wines, Barolo and Barbaresco, differently from Burgundy, were made with the art of blending one variety, but coming from different sites. So the concept of single vineyard, we always had historic vineyard, but there was never the idea of making a wine by using only one site. So the idea was that harmony and complexity was coming from blending different sites. And actually, because historically it was made like that, all the most historic wines, so we are talking about wines from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, that we can still drink today, are all made with this concept of.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I travel and I explain that, I have the feeling that there is more regarded as single vineyard when the blend is considered less important than a single vineyard.
But yeah, and that's unfortunate because I feel like the blend is actually one that brings out some of the best. So
you can have contribution, as I was saying, vineyard that they give more perfume, more fruit, more structure, more longevity because of the tannins.
Yeah.
Even our historic wine Barbaresco that Giovanni was talking about before is still today a blend of 14 different vineyards.
14, that's amazing. So Giovanni, we're tasting this Nebbiolo. Just taste this with us. Give us your thoughts on Nebbiolo and Barolo and how this magic happens.
So Nebbiolo is a magical variety. It's most of all is a variety that has an identity and that keeps a very strong connection with the territory and the land where it's produced. Just imagine that in the world there are a total of 350,000 hectares of Cabernet planted and only 7,000 of Nebbiolo. And of these 7,000, over 3,000 hectares comes from the Langhe area. And this gives you an idea of how much Nebbiolo is attached and depends on the climate and on the soil of this particular area. I think also the the climate and the soil of this area, not only do they define the wine, but they also define the people. Because, you know, we have a climate that is, here we have a continental climate with warm summer and cold winters. All the vineyards are planted on the slope of the hills and they are very steep. The soils are very compact. There is a lot of humidity, and as Gaia said earlier, there is a lot of fog. So this kind of climate is the reason why the people living in this area, which are called the Langhetti, have always been known as a very hard workers, very suspicious people. You know, they don't trust anything that comes too easy or too quickly. So they're always difficult to read. And Nebbiolo is the same, because Nebbiolo is not a wine that when you put into the glass is immediately explosive, but it's very profound. It takes time. It takes really time it takes oxygenation, and the more you leave it into the glass, and the more it opens up. One of a friend of ours, which is a collectionist, came to the winery, and I believe he gave us the best description of what it means to drink Nebbiolo. He said that drinking Nebbiolo, when you drink a Barbaresco Nebbiolo, it feels like you're being kicked in the face by a ballerina dancer, which I find a very beautiful way to describe it, because when you taste a Nebbiolo, you have at the same time austerity and structure, but also delicacy and softness. And so you have two opposite realities working and being combined together.
Yeah, Nebbiolo always is so interesting to me, of having this beautiful kind of lighter color and these soft floral aromas, but then after you taste it, also the structure is just, you know, comes at you, and those,
yeah,
it's a very different and unique grape and wine.
And this happens even more with Barolo, because in the Barolo area, the soils are younger compared to Barbaresco, which means that younger soils are even more compact. And the roots, in order to go in depth, they really have to struggle. And the same struggle, you then feel it again and you taste it in the wine. Because usually when you taste Barolo, you're always tasting more tannins, more austerity, there is more earthiness in general, and the wine needs to have a lot of time to breathe, and you need to give it, you need to have extra patience with Barolo.
So for this wine, what would your recommendations be for its aging potential, longevity?
So with Nebbiolo, there is a pattern of aging for Nebbiolo, and I also like it to compare it to people, because the first 5 years of aging of Nebbiolo, it feels like when you are in elementary school, you know, so you're always happy, you have no worries. And the wine, it's similar, because it's, you know, you open a bottle and I'm not saying it's expressive, but it's approachable. You know, you give it time and it comes out. Then the next 5 years, from 5 to 10 years, is like the wine is reaching puberty. So, you know, you change your voice, you change yourself, you always fight with your parents. And between 5 and 10 years, opening a bottle of Nebbiolo is really an enigma, because you can open a bottle and it can be extremely showy, or instead it doesn't really open up and it's still closed. And the more you leave it into the glass, and it doesn't really open up. But this is a period of evolution for it's a phase of evolution of Nebbiolo. When Nebbiolo reaches 10 years old, it then reaches its peak. And the beauty of Nebbiolo is that it then stays on that peak for another 15, 20 years, and then it starts a very slow decrease. And I think this is also the secret behind the longevity of Nebbiolo. Why Nebbiolo is a variety that is able and is structured and is designed to age really in time and in space.
Yeah, you just kind of, I love the descriptions because that reminds me of my children. So perfectly described. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for being here and talking about these wines, these 3 wines. I love your father's video was so meaningful. Please thank him for doing that. I love that he kind of pushed on making you kind of think differently, because I can tell by these wines and the future of Gaia that's definitely where you're going. But all of these are beautiful and for continuing the Gaia legacy. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Salute.
Salute.
It's both a science and a form of high art. It's made from the combination of grapes, sunlight, rain, soil, and time. It's raised up in the moments that matter. It's wine. And we are Wine.com. We have the largest wine selection in the world, online sommeliers with free advice, and now our powerful new app puts the entire world of wine in your hands. Wine.com. Seriously passionate about wine. Download our free app today.